This week in our study on wisdom, I want to talk about a type of person that Proverbs and Ecclesiastes warns us about. And I know last week we were doing Ecclesiastes, and what I'm doing is like alternating Ecclesiastes one week, something else about wisdom the next week, then back to Ecclesiastes, so it's alternating. So this time, we're going to look at some verses in the book of Proverbs. Let me ask you guys a question. And turn in your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 8. Before you start reading in it, just turn to Proverbs chapter 8. What was the first thing God ever created?
The universe.
Not the universe, not the heavens and the earth. Anyone else want to take a guess?
Contains dust. Dirt.
Not dirt.
Was I close?
No.
I know.
Those are all good guesses, though.
No, I know.
Go ahead. That's a good guess, but it's not the sun. Okay, you want me to tell you the answer? Look at Proverbs chapter 8, verse 22. And this is wisdom speaking here. Wisdom is speaking, which is, I know a weird thing to say, but it's how this part of the Bible is being written. It's like if wisdom was talking.
What's the thing? Like a person named wisdom?
It's like God's pretending wisdom is a person and talking as wisdom, kind of. A personification, there you go. It says, starting at verse 22, "The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I have been established from everlasting from the beginning, before there was ever an earth. When there were no depths I was brought forth, when there were no fountains abounding with water, before the mountains were settled, before the hills I was brought forth." So the first thing God ever made was wisdom. And go ahead and make a note of that. That could be a cool quiz question, I think. The first thing God ever made was wisdom. And what you guys were guessing, those were wonderful guesses. And that's probably what, this is like a really like hidden, this is like a hidden little thing in the Bible. It's not, it's like a little nugget. I didn't expect any, it's not something like, oh, you should know that God made wisdom first. It's not a big deal. I was just asking, it's kind of like a trivia type of thing. I'm not trying to make you feel dumb. Hey, don't worry about it. It's okay. It's not really trivia, though, kind of insinuates that it's not something important. This actually does have major relevance to our lives. There actually is a way that this is very, because we might think, well, that happened before the earth was even here. Who cares if God made wisdom first? What relevance does that have to me? When God made the world, he made it according to wisdom. I'll explain what that means. You know how God made like all the physical laws that we live by? Like gravity, yeah. Thermodynamics, matter. You know, like all these things you learn in science class.
You learn stuff in science?
Physics, right. The things that you learn in physics. And a huge one there is like gravity. You know, that's a basic one. The law of gravity. Heating and cooling, the laws of matter. So God made the universe according to these laws. The universe functions according to these laws. But God also made the universe to function according to moral laws, like wisdom. That's why it's so important that God made wisdom first. God made us in the universe to function according to moral laws. Now, when we don't follow the moral laws that God set out beforehand, then relationships suffer and the quality of life suffers. Relationships break down. Society breaks down when they don't follow moral laws. So, the more we follow God's wisdom, the better our relationships in society are going to function. Does that make sense? So, I don't know if this helps you put it in. This is kind of a long note, but I just think it's so important. Like the physical laws, the universe is sustained by following moral laws. If they're broken, relationships and society don't function properly. I want to move on. You guys can keep writing. What this note, though, means, it's the longest note I was going to have you guys write, but it's just so important, and I couldn't get it into fewer words. But God's wisdom helps us to live the best life possible. You know, some people think God's rules are too restrictive. They don't let me have any fun. But when we follow them, sometimes they are less fun. But when we follow them, they actually let us live very high-functioning lives, the most enjoyable lives that we can live, if we'll just follow God's rules. You don't have to write this next note down. I'm just throwing it up here because it's a Bible verse. You don't have to write it down. But this is the verse that tells you how to get wisdom. It says, the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Is that a little bit complicated? It's a strange, and you don't have to write that last note down. Okay. It's a little strange though, right? At the beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. What that's saying is that the first step to becoming a wise person is when you make the decision that you want to be a wise person. Does that make sense? So that's the first thing you got to do, decide, I want to be wise. And that'll make you become a more wise person. So if you want to be a wise person, you're in the right place because we're going to study some wisdom today. One of the books of wisdom in the Bible is called Proverbs. I have a few notes I want to give you guys about Proverbs. Like Ecclesiastes that we were studying last week, Proverbs was written by Solomon. A proverb is a short saying that states a general truth or piece of advice. So see, someone says, well, what does Proverbs mean? What does that word mean? Well, this book is a list of short, catchy sayings. And like I said there, they'll give you something that's generally true or just a good piece of advice. So I'll give you an example of a proverb. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. It's like, what does that mean?
I hate your laugh.
I don't know where that accent came from, but everything you said was true. Yeah. And what's so interesting about the Proverbs that God gives, most of the time, when you want to explain what a proverb means, it takes like a whole paragraph to do it. But God's able to just put them in this little short sentence, a little nugget. Like lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. That means everything that Charlene said, but God's just always able to put it in the fewest amount of words possible. And that's what makes the Proverbs so wise. Proverbs emphasize wisdom through character, relationships, and words, and how fools fail in these areas. So this book of Proverbs, it's all about having wisdom through having good character, good relationships with people, with significant others and stuff like that, and with our words. But the book also often tells us how fools screw up in all these different areas. So we're going to be looking at one specific type of fool today. Proverbs talks about different types of fools. They have what I'm calling the three losers. Those are called the simple, the scorners, and just the fools. And so what we're going to be looking at today is the first loser, which is also known as the scoffer. Do you remember a few weeks ago how I was talking about how the Bible has a lot of different words for love?
Yeah.
And like in our Bibles, they're always translated just love, but then they have other words if you go to the original language like agape or phileo or eros or other stuff. Okay, so anyway, that's also true with the word fool. There's different types of fools that Proverbs teaches us about. But, okay, when we translate them to English, they're just always translated into fool. So there's different categories of fools, and I want to, in this like metamorphosis that we're doing, I want to talk about one this time. In a few weeks, we'll talk about a different one, and in a few weeks, we'll talk about a third one. So the first fool to talk about is the scoffer. Now, sometimes you hear about fools that are called the simple. And the simple is someone who's just naive or dumb, and we'll focus on them the next time we do this. Then we have the Nabal fool. The Nabal fool is the one who thinks he's smarter than God. Okay, we'll focus on him sometime.
But she's wrong.
But we're talking about a different one here. We're talking about one called the scoffer. The scoffer, it's also known as the mocker or the scorner. That's what we're focusing on today. What does it mean to scoff? Like I tell everyone in here, just scoff. I almost played that, but I want to save it for next time on the simple.
We did that at the same time.
Oh, I can't do a hair flip. You know. I tried to do a hair flip and I just threw my neck out. You know, isn't it annoying when someone scoffs? Like, there's few things that could make you more annoyed than maybe when someone scoffs at something that you like, right? That could just be real grating when someone scoffs at something you like.
And
Emily's laughing because you do that to me all the time. Is that
I was
what?
thinking of the little friends.
Oh, my little
I
friends.
spit
She scoffed at my little friends that have sat in front of my TV since basically we got married, and yet I've made $100 selling 2 of them on eBay this week. So.
Thanks for the help.
So there's not very many things that are more annoying than whenever someone scoffs at something you like, or maybe someone you love. Now that could be really irritating, right? Someone scoffs at a person you love. So the scoffer is that annoying person who likes to make fun of people, treat people with disdain, disrespect others,
And then you punch them.
and they really take pleasure in disliking things. Now, do you think scoffers are very popular people?
No.
They actually are.
There's
What?
like way too many people like that in high school.
There's tons of them in high school. They are very popular people. They are the type of like the blogger that everyone loves going and reading this person's blog because they love how he just takes down people and takes people apart and just, really can give it to people. They love his put downs.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Proverbs is all about stereotypes, really. It's about general things that are true about people, which is what stereotypes are.
Today they're not really popular.
Blogs. There's lots of blogs that are popular today. Also, the snooty popular girl at school who thinks she's better than everyone, and the other girls are like scared of her or intimidated by her or
What?
whatever. They're very popular. There's people like that. Like Sherlock Holmes, he can be a bit of a scoffer. Yeah. Lots of politicians are very successful scoffers.
Like Donald Trump.
I'm not picking on any particular ones, but maybe. A lot of people on talk radio. You turn on people. I'm on the radio. Yeah, you can turn a lot of people on the radio, and they're really popular because they're good scoffers. People like to hear their put downs of other people. Hey, I'm saying that because since I work in talk radio, I know just how true it is that a lot of people love hearing people who are really good at griping. So the scoffer, he always thinks he's right. The scoffer wants to make you feel stupid if you don't agree with them,
Or if you like something.
or if you like something that they think is dumb.
Or
They want you to
if
feel.
actually want to do something. Like actually want to go have fun.
So you're thinking of specific people right now, aren't you? Yeah. No, that's fine. Whenever we read about this, we do start thinking, oh, I know lots of people like that. I know people who do exactly what the Bible's talking about here.
Way too many people like this.
Yeah. So and everyone in here knows some scoffers in their life, probably too many, and wishes we didn't know. They're a very annoying type of person. Yeah. The scoffer wants you to feel wrong if you disagree with him or her. Now, they might actually be very smart. I mean, this person might be right about a lot of the things that they say. I'm not saying that they're dumb, but being a scoffer is more about their attitude, not necessarily their level of intelligence.
Can I just write this?
Yeah, I want you guys to write this one down. Turn to Psalm chapter 1, verse 1 whenever you get done writing that down.
What was that?
Psalm chapter 1, verse 1. Psalm chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful." Should we listen to someone who's one of these scoffers, or the scornful is another word for them?
Nope.
Should we listen to them? What if they're very smart and they're really good at describing things and teaching us information? Should we listen to them?
No.
The Bible says not to, because, you're right, Tyler. Blessed are you if you don't listen to what they have to say. It's about their attitude. It's not about the information they give you. It's about their attitude. You might say, but they're my friend at school. I don't want to lose any of my friends. I still want to be friends with this or that person. But the Bible says you're better off without them. You'll do better if you don't have that kind of influence in your life. And remember what I said. The Bible gives us guidelines so that we can live the best life possible, to be the most successful in the world. So, if we know what the Bible says and we don't want to listen to it for whatever excuse, we are just making our lives harder. It's our own fault. You might say, but I learned so much information from that person. I want to keep learning information from them. You might get a lot of great knowledge from them, but they'll take you further away from wisdom, because there's a difference. They might give you lots of great knowledge, but they'll take you further from wisdom. So, when I was studying this, I was like going through the podcast on my phone and I was looking at each one. And I was thinking, is this person a scoffer? You know, maybe I don't want to listen to them anymore. What were you going to say?
I was going to say wisdom is stronger than intelligence.
Yeah, wisdom's more important. I'd rather have that. I mean, of course we want both, but wisdom is more important. So you can write down what these words for the scoffer are, because the Bible will use all of these. It'll call them the scoffer, the mocker, the scorner.
The wits.
The
Is that right?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. It's the Hebrew word. I think it was pronounced lutes, like the W's silent.
Oh.
So I think that's how it said it.
Anyway.
The lutes. Sounds too much like my name. Or it's just called the fool. Yeah, the fool sometimes. But it all means the same thing. It's all describing the same type of person. So you can write down like all those are the same thing. That's just the Hebrew word, that word lutes. Now what I want to give you guys now, 5 attributes of a scoffer. So if you don't have enough room to write down like a list of 5 sentences, you can turn your page over and write them on the back. 5 attributes of a scoffer, that's what I'm going to give you. 5 personality traits.
All right. Oh.
So you might want to turn your page over because I don't have any more note pages. Turn to Proverbs chapter 3, verse 33. And you don't want to, you just leave your Bibles open or like set them down where it stays on that page, because we're going to stay in Proverbs for the rest of this. We'll go back and forth between the Bible and
What was the verse?
Proverbs 3:34. Here's the first attribute that I want you guys to see of the scoffer. Surely he, and that's talking about God there, surely he scorns the scornful, but gives grace to the humble. Surely he scorns the scornful, but gives grace to the humble. This is a contrast proverb. That means it's talking about one thing, and then it gives you the opposite of that thing. So let's look at the opposite of what the scornful person is. What's the word that God uses to describe the opposite of a scorner? The humble. The humble are the opposite of a scorner. So what does that mean about a scorner? They have a prideful heart. They're not humble. They have pride. Like Nebuchadnezzar, yeah, or Nezer. Yeah, there was a whole chapter that we read and studied that God, he was so prideful. Actually, I think that's here in my notes. Yeah, God made Nebuchadnezzar. He took away his sanity and made him live like a wild animal for a long time. So, scorners have a prideful heart. Remember that pride is one of the ultimate sins. Pride, I like to say, is what made the devil, because pride got the devil kicked out of heaven. The devil wanted to be the number one, and it got him kicked out of heaven. He was number one, but not really.
I was just saying that earlier. I don't know if I was quoting.
So, pride is just a very important sin for us to watch out for, and it's also the ultimate thing that keeps people away from God, because people don't want to get saved because they would have to admit that they're a sinner, and a lot of people don't want to do that.
Everyone should know that.
Right, and you know, I thought that was the most basic thing that everyone could recognize. But I mean, I've even seen people before with my own eyes say, "Well, God doesn't need to forgive me. I don't have any sins He needs to forgive me of."
What?
And I'm like, dude,
I've
you're
seen
so.
like that in videos.
You've seen that in videos?
Mostly
Yeah.
in like politics.
Oh yeah. Oh, there was a presidential candidate last year who said he doesn't need God's forgiveness. I remember that.
I don't remember that.
It happened sometime last year. Anyway, so we'll find that there's a lot of people who don't want to get saved because they don't want to admit that their own good works aren't good enough to get them to heaven because they need Jesus. You know, they say they're a good enough person without God. They say, "Oh, I'm fine. I don't need God." That's pride. And it might not sound prideful, but that's the number one thing that can keep people away from God. God says in that verse, He will scorn the scornful. And that sounds like some serious business to me. I mean, I don't think we should take that lightly. The scornful should be afraid to hear that. If you're scornful, God will scorn you. So we just got to remember, either we humble ourselves or God is going to humble us. And it's always better if we humble ourselves. Okay, turn to Proverbs 13:1. So probably just turn a page or two in your Bible.
It's just kind of like.
Look down there in the corner. It's got chapter 13 on page 339. We're going to read the first verse. A wise son heeds his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. A wise son heeds his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. So here's the second note. A scoffer is a know-it-all. I spent the most time, I was trying to find little pictures that go with these things. I spent the most time on the brain, because there's a lot of pictures of brains that are just very disturbing. And I just couldn't find one even that one was bothering me by the time I got to it, but I just went with it. I don't know, I guess because I've been looking at all these weird looking brains. Well, I was trying to find a brain with like glasses that looked kind of like a little nerd. And I just got some weird stuff came up, and it just bothered. Like they were using like real human brains with glasses on them, and I'm like, that's not what I wanted. That's weird. It wasn't. What?
You search like animated?
I did. I searched clip art, and then they had like computerized CGI brains, and it was just too weird. Just go look at it yourself. I'm serious. I had to do this anyway. A scoffer is a know-it-all. Hey, just because someone's really smart, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily a know-it-all. A know-it-all is someone who just never thinks that they need to be corrected. They think that they're just always Mr. or Mrs. Perfect. I've seen teenagers do dumb things before. What?
You've not seen dumb teenagers.
I have seen teenagers do dumb things before, but then, well, I sure did. But when I went and like corrected them, they just accepted it. They learned from it, and I thought, wow, that is a really wise person. You know, even though they'd done something dumb, I thought, but they didn't get mad when I went, and I've been afraid before to go to a teenager and like have to tell them, hey, you know, you did this or that, and that was wrong. You shouldn't have done that. I might have been afraid to do that before because I don't want to have a bad relationship with them. Yeah, or below their top. And they just accepted it, learned from it. And I thought, you know, I don't care that they did some dumb thing because they used it as a learning opportunity. And I just thought they're a really wise teenager. Now, I've seen adults, and someone just gives them, not even correcting them, just gives them some advice, like just a little bit of friendly advice, and they just got upset about it. Well, who are they to tell me how to run my whatever, you know? Or they think that they can just tell me what, you know, they can't tell me what to do. And when I hear, what?
That's what my dad.
When I've seen just adults just blow up over just friendly advice, and I'm just thinking, what a fool. Because they're just showing that it's like what that verse was saying. They think that they're already a know-it-all. They think that they don't need to learn anything else. And that's what makes somebody a fool. So, you know, listen, when I say teenagers wise, I mean, and not all teenagers are wise, but I've just seen teenagers, even people in our youth group before, show incredible wisdom because they would receive correction without getting upset and throwing a fit about it, but just learning from it and taking it well. I don't care if you screw up 100 times a day, if you're willing to be corrected 100 times a day. That's what makes you wise. It's not the mistake you made, but it's how you handled it. That's really where the wisdom comes in. How you learn from it, right? And if you have to learn the lesson 100 times, I mean, as long as you're willing to learn from it and you're still trying, that's what makes you a wise person. Not your mistake, not your screw up. Now, the scoffer is not interested in correction. I mean, they think that they know it all already. So it makes them angry if you have a different idea than them, or if you think you have a right to correct them. It makes them very angry. That's one of the attributes of a scoffer. Okay, now this next one, it's in Proverbs 14:6. So I think just turn the page. Look for chapter 14 there. Go down to verse 6. Yeah. In this one here, it makes me feel a little bit sorry for the scoffer. It says, a scoffer seeks wisdom and does not find it, but knowledge is easy to him who understands. So the third attribute of a scoffer is that they can't find God's wisdom. Does the scoffer seek wisdom? What do you think? It was in the verse we just read. Do you guys want to check it again?
I don't know what verse we just read.
Why can't you just tell us?
14:6, because we just read it literally a minute ago.
He does, but like.
A scoffer seeks wisdom
Oh, yeah.
and does not find it. So the scoffer actually does seek after wisdom, but they aren't going to have any luck in their search. I've noticed that the Bible, one of the things that's amazing about the Bible, you will always get out of it what you're trying to get out of it. I mean, if you're just someone who doesn't give the Bible much credit, and you just think it's a bunch of primitive ramblings of ancient dumb people who doesn't know anything about today, then whenever you read the Bible, all you're going to get out of it are primitive ramblings of ancient people who don't know anything about today. That's all you're going to see. You're not going to find anything deeper. You're just going to find what you're expecting to find. Now, if you're someone who thinks the Bible is incredibly deep and tells us a lot of insight about the human condition, then when you open up the Bible, you're going to find deep stuff about humans, about life. You're going to find what you put into it. Yeah.
So you're saying that the scoffer, like,
Oh, yeah, they're not going to find anything in the Old Testament then to help them. When there's tons of stuff. I mean, we're in the Old Testament today, but people would maybe look at this. Oh, that's Old Testament. Psh. Well, they're not going to learn anything from it because they're not even coming at it with an attitude of humility or, trying to receive what God might have for them. You know what I mean? So that's, people are going to get out of the Bible what they're expecting to get out of the Bible. And by the way, that goes for Christians too. The more value you place on the Bible, the more you're going to get out of it whenever you crack it open and read it. That's just something that's amazing about the Bible to me. Okay, look at verse 9. Still in chapter 14, but just look at verse 9. It's at the top of the page. It says, fools, and this word for fools, it's that word like lutes or whatever. It's the mocker. Fools mock at sin, but among the upright there is favor. Fools mock at sin, but among the upright there is favor. Be careful what you laugh at, because it can actually say a lot about our character, what kind of things that we find funny. You guys know what I mean? Like everyone, we have our standards. Hopefully we have our standards of like what we'd watch on TV, Like for me, I have a bar. I'm like, if it has this much bad language, if it has any nudity in it, I won't watch it. But I will say this, my tolerance for what kind of comedy that I watch is a lot lower than like what I'd watch of other type of stuff. Because comedy is a little bit different. Comedies will try to make you laugh at sin and make sin just seem funny or non-threatening to you. And that can be a lot more dangerous than like a movie that depicts sin, but it actually shows the effects of it. Comedies a lot of times will just try to make you laugh at things that are sinful until they kind of warp your mind a little bit. And they make you not really think about things biblically. You just find things funny that we shouldn't find funny. Yeah.
a lot of comedies.
I mean, there's a lot of comedies that mock God and stuff like that. Yeah. So my tolerance for what I'd watch on comedy is a lot lower than what I'd put about anything else. Because, if the devil can make you... The devil can use comedy to throw sin in your face and not even make you repulsed by it. Just to make you start to be comfortable with it. And that's something that comedy just does really well. Yeah. I was talking more about if you're watching like scary movies, I think, on that. That can be a way of the devil trying to make you comfortable with evil stuff. But I'm talking more not so much about demonic stuff, but just like, any comedy, like premarital sex. I didn't mean to say the S word in front of younger people.
I hear that word all the time.
Yeah. When you... okay. Whenever you watch it, like I was watching this one TV show this week, and a girl had sex before she was married, and she's like freaking out about it. Afraid that her mom's going to find out, and then her mom did find out. She like got in trouble. She felt guilty about it. The guy just kind of blew her off right after it happened. It's very much like real life whenever you think about it. Now that's what a drama can do. It might depict something. I mean, it didn't show the sex scene, but it can show you like this person did this thing and these were the consequences of her mistake. This guy just kind of, at first he just kind of treated her like trash after that. And by the end of the week, they were broken up. Okay, anyway, now in a comedy, people are doing that kind of stuff. They aren't going to teach you about the effects of that decision. They're, the comedy just makes a joke out of it probably. Oh, they so-and-so did all this kind of stuff. They make you laugh about it. It just twists your mind a little bit. So I'm just saying, I didn't mean to spend so much time on this one thing. But, comedy, there's lots of great comedies out there. But I'm saying, like, I have a lower tolerance for what I will let myself laugh at. Because mockers laugh at sin and evil things. So that's the fourth note. Mockers laugh at sin and evil things. So it's not something that we really want to do. Oh, like the Three Stooges. I mean, that's not really sin then. Not everything we laugh at is sinful. There's lots of good things we can laugh at. A great TV show, and this one's kind of a comedy actually, but it's not the kind of comedy I'm talking about. There's one, I think it's on Netflix if you have Netflix, it's called Freaks and Geeks. And it's not a totally clean show. It's set in a high school. It's got very typical high school stuff. but it's got some really great like moral values and lessons in it.
Go home and watch that.
Yeah, it's. I think it's worth watching. It'll teach you a lot of good lessons, and it really does like depict what the world is really like. Now, sometimes but one more thing on this topic about laughing at sin. Sometimes you will be with like non-Christian friends probably, and they'll make a joke about something that's inappropriate, right? Have you ever been in that situation before?
No.
Sometimes you're with a non-Christian friend, and they might make a dirty joke or something, and you kind of don't know what to do right at that moment. Just kindly say to them like, hey, I don't really joke about things like that. I mean, I'm not saying get judgmental on them. Don't try to like make them feel bad. If they're not a Christian, you don't have to hold them to some special standard, but you can just tell them, hey, I don't joke about things like that. I don't find that kind of stuff funny. I don't like those kind of jokes. And, I understand sometimes someone will say something inappropriate because they're trying to make us laugh. So you don't want to be like rude. You might want to chuckle a little bit or not be rude or something like that. I get it. I know you don't want to hurt their feelings. I totally understand. But, as Christians, we got to have the courage sometimes to say, hey, I I get the joke, but I don't think that's really funny, or that's not something I would laugh at. It's totally fine to say something like that, because here's the thing. It'll reflect poorly on a Christian's character if they're seen laughing at things that they shouldn't be laughing at. That makes Christians look bad. So the closer you get to God, the less funny sinful things are going to seem to you. Okay, last Proverbs thing about this. Turn to 17:5. So turn one more page. It's page 342. You see chapter 17 there. And go down to verse 5. He who mocks the poor reproaches his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. One last note about scorners. Scorners delight in tragedy. The little nuclear bomb. Finally, some positive feedback.
I thought you were going to say finally a positive emoji.
Scorners delight in tragedy. Now, you might say, who in the world delights in tragedies? They love it when something bad happens. They want to be the first one to say, oh, called it. I knew that was going to happen. Told you so. I knew this was coming. And even if they didn't really call it, they just want to be the one who says that they called it. There's lots of people like that. I remember right after the terrorist attack that happened in America a few months ago at the gay nightclub. Do you guys remember that? And there was one at a gay nightclub. Several people got shot. And I remember right after it happened. And I was reading something on the internet. And so far, the only news that had come out was, oh, there's a shooting in a nightclub. And then they said, oh, it's a gay nightclub. And I remember reading that someone said, oh, I bet it was some Christian terrorist. Finally, the world's going to see how hateful the Christians are. And like when I read that, I could just tell that the person writing it was like excited that they thought this was a Christian terrorist. And they were saying like, oh, now the world's going to see how hateful Christians really are. It's like they were excited about that. Now, of course, it wasn't a Christian terrorist. Like almost all terror attacks, it was a Muslim terrorist, like anyone could expect. There's just a lot of people who are real anti-Christian out there. And I just remember reading this after that terrorist attack. People were hoping it was like a Christian who did it, just so it would make the Christians look bad. So, and I know that's just the words someone typed or put on a computer screen or whatever, or said on an interview or something like that. But I could just see the excitement behind them, and that's just what this is talking about. They get excited about bad stuff happening. They delight in tragedy. And so those are 5 attributes of the scoffer there. 5 ways you can identify what type of person a scoffer is. Now, let me tell you what the cure for the scoffer is. Because every time when the Bible gives you a problem, it always gives you the solution. It tries to give you the cure. So let me ask you guys a question. Does the Bible tell us to rebuke people sometimes? That means to tell someone, that they're wrong about something, or try to correct them or give them advice. Does the Bible tell us to rebuke people ever? Yeah, there's lots of places where the Bible tells us to rebuke. There's one type of person the Bible tells us not to rebuke, though. Turn to Proverbs chapter 9. So go back a couple pages and look at verses 7 and 8. You guys all there? So look at verses 7 and 8. It says 9, 7, 8. Yeah. Why is 6 afraid of 7? Okay, look at verse 7 there. You just clicked. He who corrects a scoffer gets shame for himself, And he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. It's not so much that the Bible says not to rebuke a scoffer. It just says it's not going to do any good. They're not going to want to listen to you. They don't want to hear what you have to say. They'll get offended. It's kind of just like a lose-lose if you try to correct a scoffer. I mean, you're not really going to help them. It's like what you were saying earlier, I think.
What?
About helping a scoffer, and they just try to turn it around on you. You know, when you rebuke a scoffer, it's a lose-lose because they don't want to hear what you have to say, and now you've incurred their wrath, and now they're going to try to lash out at you just because you tried to help them. You can't really help a scoffer when you try to rebuke them. They're not going to learn from it. They're going to find someone else to blame. When they mess up, they don't want to accept responsibility. They're certain that it's someone else's fault. So, unfortunately, the Bible doesn't give us a direct cure for being a scoffer. Yeah, write this one down.
Well, you just said you'd give us the cure.
I know I am going to. But it's this word direct. The Bible doesn't give us a direct cure. The Bible does not say, do this and they won't be a scoffer anymore. But it is going to give us a bit of a cure. It's just kind of, I think, hidden away.
What's so anticlimactic?
I haven't got to the end yet. That would be a really terrible ending. I didn't want to end it there, so I kept studying. I think I have an answer. The Bible does not give us a direct cure for being a scoffer. And I say that because there's other types of fools that we'll study next time, like the simple or someone who's just called the fool, the Nabal fool. They have a cure for them, but they don't give you a cure for the scoffer in the Bible. But it tells you what to do with the scoffer. So turn to Proverbs chapter 22.
Why does it say in parentheses,
I'll get to that in just a second. Yeah, 22 verse 10. Proverbs 22 verse 10. Cast out the scoffer and contention will leave. Yes, strife and reproach will cease. So the Bible does give us permission to kick these people out of our lives. And I know that doesn't sound very Christian-y. Not kick them literally, but to push them away. To kick those people out of our lives. That might not sound very Christian-y, but that's what our Christian Bible says. So when I say, is there no hope for them? Is there just nothing that we can do for a scoffer? I think that is their hope. Their hope is getting cast out. Because I think that's what it would finally take for someone to say, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I have a problem. And so I'm not saying that the Bible doesn't give us a hope for them. I think that is their hope. If they get cast out, that's the only thing that'll make them wake up and think, maybe I've got an attitude problem. Maybe the problem is me.
Maybe I'm the problem.
Yep, instead of everybody else. One last note. We keep reading about a fool that does not accept correction. So what does that mean if we don't want to be a fool? What does that mean for us?
Accept correction.
Yeah.
Right?
If you want to be wise, this is the last note for today. If you want to be wise, you must learn to accept criticism. And not just accept it, but appreciate it. And I'll even put myself out there as the first one. Because like last week, Pastor John was saying something in his sermon. You know, if you ever have advice for him, if you ever want to give him some feedback, he said he'd want to hear it. And I'll even say that for me. If you've ever got an opinion on something I've said, if you think maybe there's a better way I could say something, if you think maybe I focused too much on one issue, if you think I've said something wrong, come and let me know about it. And I'm not going to get mad at you for saying... What?
I said, I mean, you could.
No, I will not get mad at you. I'll accept what you say. And even if I'm not saying I'll always agree 100% of the time, but I do want to hear feedback on stuff. So I would put myself out there and say that too. Even it's not just has to be a youth pastor related thing. If you think I have some kind of like personal flaw that's a problem, I mean, I'm sure you can add it to the list that I'm sure Emily already has. She could just let you tag it right on there. So.
Let me tell you something.
Uh-huh. Well, I guess that goes back to that one verse about don't sit in the seat of scorners. Eventually, it is going to make you less wise to get advice from them or to be under their counsel. So, yeah, it is better off in the long run if you cast them out. I just saw this one picture and it just made me laugh. Proverbs 12:1. Whoever hates correction is stupid. I just like how simple that the Bible puts that verse. So learn to love correction. It'll make you wise. But just as importantly, it'll keep you from becoming a scoffer.